And we are live. Good morning and welcome to another episode of Wednesday Weavings. This series is dedicated to bridging the human divide, and I'm your host, Shera Sever. I'm a leadership and communications consultant and the founder of Igniting the Spark. And I consult with organizational leaders and community leaders on best practices to create engagement within their companies and within their community. Excuse me. Bridging the Human Divide is a series that I started earlier this summer. It's a series of weekly conversations with everyday change makers committed to moving from polarization to understanding divergent perspectives in our communities, workplaces, organizations, and personal relationships. The intent is to invite all together around the fire of collective heart intelligence so that we can all move forward with more grace, understanding, dialogue, and engaged compassion in action. And I have a very special guest with me today, Jul Bystrova, who I've known for a number of years. We've participated in all kinds of community activities, activism, the Wisdom 2.0 conference. And I just want to tell you a little bit about this amazing woman. She is the founder of the Inner Resilient Network, and she's going to speak today on relational somatics and how they bridge the human divide. In addition to being the co-founder of the Inner Resilience Network, she's the director of the Era of Care Project, which works with frontline communities. She has a 25-year history of community activism and a thriving private practice in trauma-informed mind-body healing work. She's served as an interfaith minister, an academic in interdisciplinary research, and a boots-on-the-ground activist. She writes about cultural healing, social justice, and psycho-spiritual topics. She also serves on the Transition US Collaborative Design Council and is a member of the Social Justice Working Group. In 2018, she received the TUS Social Justice Award for her support in raising awareness and diversity in the transition community. So my goodness, welcome, Julie. I'm so happy to have you here today. And it's been quite an adventure for both of us on our Northern California road trips, and the show goes on. Woo! So how are you today?
Oh, it's a beautiful morning. Thank you. I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to have been able to get out in nature, and that always makes me feel better.
Absolutely. We need that a lot today. So let's just dive in, Jul. First of all, we had a conversation, I guess about a month ago when I was starting this series, and you came to mind as someone whose message I would like to get out there more. So I'm just curious, what inspired you to become part of this conversation?
Your conversation, Bridging the Divide?
Yes.
Okay. Because it's so completely aligned with the work that I've been passionate about for pretty much most of my life, which is about bringing, understanding diverse perspectives and ideologies, belief systems, backgrounds, and finding ways, commonality, finding ways to dialogue, finding ways to understand the world that we live in, and even the nature of reality, you know, because I have a philosophy background, so I've been very interested in that as well. But it's, you know, it's trying to find that connecting point between differences has been going on my whole life, starting very early, since I grew up with a minister mother and a scientist father. So I just really got exposed very early on with very different perspectives. Also had a different cultures in my household. So there was a trying to make sense of these different influences I had on my own personal belief systems began my journey. And then it's expanded since then into, studying and trying to understand different perspectives on.
Yes, I hear that. It's been a lifelong and very deep quest for you. You mentioned something about finding the points of connection or the connection points in the understanding of these divergent ways and beliefs and values and perspectives. Could you share a little bit more about how you go about doing that, or how do you know when you have tapped into that connection point?
Wow, that's a really great question. Usually there's a little aha moment. It's like, oh, okay, you just get you feel some insight coming in, like about something that you hadn't thought of, a way of looking at the world in a way that you hadn't done before, and it's like, oh, now I understand where that person or that group of people are coming from. So there's just a feeling of like understanding, and the result of that is I feel more connected. And also there might be some judgments that I was holding about a person or a group of people, a community perspective. There might be a judgment that I was holding, whether consciously or unconsciously, that relaxes as I open to a great understanding.
Yeah, I love that, that you brought up. Number one, it's just kind of a knowingness. It's a feeling that, wow, we've reached a connection point. And sometimes I think that comes from the person, you, that has had a realization that, now I understand that perspective. And wow, that is so different from how I looked at things through my lens, or wow, that person's background or life's experiences or cultural influences really are so different than mine. And I'm so grateful to now understand that. And the judgments, becoming aware of our judgments, which are really just protectors. I find judgments to be, they're filters for us to continue to feel safe in our not knowingness. So I'm just wondering if you wanted to comment even a little bit more on the awareness of judgments and how that helps bridge the divide.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we have to come to the awareness that we are judging before we can even begin to do the dismantling of those judgments. And a lot
Exactly.
of people don't realize that. I mean, that's why we have a lot of the conflicts that we're seeing now, between, politically and culturally and, racially. There's so many unconscious and implicit biases and judgments that are going on that we're not aware of, and they contribute to these conflicts in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually my next question is, what do you think are some of the causes of the divide and the polarization that we're finding in, not just in our country? I was just in conversation with a friend and colleague in Berlin yesterday, and it's the same things that we are experiencing in our communities, regions, and nationwide here are happening in other parts of the world. And I was thinking, wow, the divide is just happening, in my region, or just what I'm experiencing from watching, different reports, if you will, from sources of media. And it's like, it's a global divide that is occurring. And what I'm hearing you say is that one of the core causes of this divide is individual judgment, just from our own lens. But I would say that there's also a collective judgment occurring. Would you want to comment on that at all?
Absolutely, there is, and it's there's collective biases, just like we see in racism, for example, and that we're raised with and we're conditioned by, and we're not aware, of anything else. Me being, somebody that has identified as white, I grew up. I won't go into it. I had a little bit of different upbringing than maybe some other of my white colleagues, but that exposed me. But nonetheless, I had a very much of a bubble, thinking that the world was the way it was from a white perspective, and not really even exposed or considered much further out than that until later in life. And so it's unconscious, these collective biases, and it takes work to begin to understand that on an individual level. But the work I'm doing now is trying to work on a collective level and trying to understand that. And of course, you're getting that question is not an easy question to answer, because and that's actually close to my heart, honestly, because it gets into philosophy, which is some of my background. So
well, we're going to get more into your work, because I find it fascinating. I've been, since I first met you, I think it was on the Kings River many years ago, almost 15 or more. And we dove right into a very deep conversation. And it's like, I definitely want to know this woman. You mentioned a few things I just want to highlight before we move on more into your actual work, Julia. You talked about the unconscious biases, and that is something that I've been working on, or working with organizational leaders in some of the inclusion and diversity work that we do, some of the leadership and communications work that I'm doing with organizational and even community leaders. Is there's a ladder of inference. There's all kinds of different exercises that we can really dive in. And, these questions are all, they can be uncomfortable. They're a deep self-inquiry, and then allowing us to go more into a collective inquiry. And I know that is your passion. So let's move into a little bit more about where you're stirring the cauldron these days. And I want to start a little bit with just our topic. And you were the one that suggested it when we first spoke about a month ago, about relational somatics, and how relational somatics can help bridge the human divide that we're experiencing actually globally. So for the sake of our audience, I would love to hear, first of all, how you explain, or a definition of what is relational somatics.
Yes, well, relational somatics is a very newly created process that I'm in the middle of, actually. So I'm very excited about it, but it is based on many years of experience and working with, okay, what's going on here with collective and individual healing. So I've been, had a private practice. I've done a lot of individual one-on-one healing, and now I'm going into more groups and bigger venues. So there's differences there. And so, like, trying to understand how to bring the two together, as well as also looking at an issue that keeps when you apply personal practices and individual healing practices, which are super important and really necessary for our collective healing. We must all be, continuing our personal work. That's really important. However,
absolutely.
Yeah. However, there is and this is getting more and more of a meme about spiritual bypassing, and that does happen when we try to apply the personal work on a collective level, and that's why that keeps popping up now. So relational somatics. So my personal work is somatic work with myself, and that's the work I do with myself, and the work I do with other people in different forms. But it's really using the body intelligence to inform us what's really going on in the present time. It's very authentic. So relational somatics brings that into relationship with others.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love it. And, I've also been involved with somatic work for my own personal development and spiritual development and healing. and have done my best to apply it to my interpersonal and group and professional relationships. Again, for the sake of the audience, just give us a baseline explanation of just what somatics is, just first of all, so we understand that both just on an individual basis. What is somatics?
Okay. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's using the body to inform us. So through different practices, we get in touch with what's going on within our bodies physically. We quiet our minds and we really listen to the body. And there's different practices for that. But essentially it's listening to the body's intelligence to inform us how to address or unwind or deal with a particular challenge that we might be dealing with.
Yeah.
So yes. Did you want to hear how that relates to relational somatics or?
Yeah, we're going to go there in a second. I love you said that. I love that you said that. I'm even thinking a little bit later in the conversation, maybe just one or two, quick exercises that anybody can use in any kind of a situation. If they're in a heated community conversation, or, a town hall where there's tremendous division about which direction we want to move, or in an organization where there's a lot of unspoken tension or conflict among teams or initiatives. So this is so rich. So that, what else is up for the collective, and you touched upon this, is that first of all, we can't do the bypassing. It's like we've got to do the work. I mean, this is primary basic leadership. If you're going to walk the talk, you need to have done the work in order to emanate the evidence of certain behaviors and practices and attitudes and views. That's how I see it. The bypassing comes, I believe, when we say, this is how you do it, and this is how I do it, and therefore this is how the group is going to do it. Is that what you were alluding to previously?
Yeah, but maybe not in such a linear fashion, but
yeah, go ahead. I'm kind of linear.
But I do want to answer your first question, which is a couple of practices. So
Okay.
that are easy, that are something that you can go to right away in any situation, and that is simply belly breathing. Just feeling your belly, soften your belly, try to increase your breath so it feels full, like it fully rises your belly, and your belly fully rises and falls, and you just feel it. You just
That's
feel your
beautiful.
breath in your belly. It's very simple, but it just takes you out of your head and into your breath. And a lot of times
back there. Yes.
Yeah. So that's one. And then just also if you're in a situation, in a meeting or whatever, and things are tense or there's conflict coming up, belly breathing, and then also feeling your feet or your weight on your chair if you're sitting, but just feeling the ground beneath you. Just bring your attention down to your feet or down to your sacrum where you're sitting, and just notice the weight of your body. So do the belly breath and notice the weight of your body. So that just brings you into your body right away.
I love that. Yeah, just bringing us back home, basically, is what I'm hearing. And those, these are the kinds of practices that we need. And each of my interviews has, we've shared different practices, but this is what we need in these times, these emergency practice. I call them emergency practices, or, just resiliency practices. And so that we're depolarizing rather than creating more division because of a reaction that we might be having. I'd like to go just free fall for a moment, and just talking a little bit about, if it feels right, the collective trauma, and how some of the work that you're doing is addressing that, and how, and then so that we're not spiritual bypassing, because collective trauma is coming up a lot in conversations in many parts of the world. We're aware of what has occurred with our ancestors. We're aware of what has occurred on the land, and how that is actually, that trauma, if you will, is in our bodies in this time. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, that's, yeah, that is looking into that subject and deeply, I'm still in deep research with that. I've been following
Yes.
a few different people, but it's what has given birth to this relational somatics is understanding the difference between collective trauma and personal trauma,
Okay.
because those two things get really confused for people. So yes, collective trauma is like where there is a perspective, a belief system, historical um, uh, uh, violence, if you will, or something, that oppression that has been reinforced over time to a community of people
Okay.
that keeps reinforcing an injury, that no matter how much personal work you can do on yourself, you're going to keep keep dealing with the community of it, of trauma. And so doing that personal work alone is not going to address the whole collective. It has to be relational.
I love that, Julie. Could you share an example? You've been in a number of different communities doing some really powerful, what I call sacred activist work, and that's another beautiful intersection that we have, as far as our mission and purpose is concerned. Can you share some work that you've actually been doing with relational somatics and collective trauma?
Well, as I mentioned, I am newly this is a kind of a newly branded process.
Yeah, go for it.
Sort of in what I guess some people would call beta testing, but it's based on a lot of experience. So it's really using a lot of the somatic process that we already know and that's already well established, that with ourselves, personal, but bringing that into a group or even one other person, it could be, and you first get grounded in yourself. It does take some practice and some time, and then you tune into the relationship, and you tune into the group, the relationship you have with the group or the one other person, and then you tune into your body. You see how the connection point between those two, and you start to understand the effect that a group or another person has on your experience and the effect that your experience has on the group. So you become more and more aware, and things become more conscious about the way that we are affected by
Okay.
a community.
I like that. I've done a lot of circle work, both, again, with communities using many different practices like authentic relating and circling, even indigenous kinds of circle work, the basic talking stick, but where we're really speaking truth about what's going on, what we're feeling, and we have supportive witnessing occurring. I don't know if is that something that's part of the process that you're describing?
Supportive witnessing, is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. And is there any language that's involved in this relational somatics?
Yes. In fact, I'm in conversation with a colleague right now who does restorative justice work, and we've been
Right.
working. Actually did an event in June on healing justice. He spoke about that, and just like there's work that's now being done to bring restorative justice practices into into the social justice world, because that's it belongs there. I mean, it's really important. How do we?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're in conversation about bringing the somatic practices into the healing justice work.
Okay.
And so that's the languaging that we'll be borrowing from a lot, as well as
Fabulous. I
some
Yeah.
NPC languaging.
Yeah, I want to encourage everyone that's on the call or on this recording to go back to I think it was episode 2, and it's on YouTube, Bridging the Human Divide. I did interview the executive director of the Northern Arizona Restorative Justice Coalition, and that might be an interesting conversation for the two of you as well. So yeah, I'm hearing you that it's beta. I think, we've started a new cycle collectively as well, for those that follow those kinds of cycles. And a lot of new practices, ideations are in beta form right now. I believe even as a collective, we are in beta as things crumble, as the chaos turns and creates. So, I'm happy that you're in beta. Bridging the human divide is beta. So,
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, please, please.
One thing that, we've been doing a series called Building Bridges for a while, and it is all about this type of work. But one of the things that I always kind of open it up with is that, allowing ourselves to be messy right now is really important. Allowing ourselves to make mistakes, to not know if we're getting it right, super important, because we are in the leading edge of change. And in order to do this work, we need to, be uncomfortable a little bit.
Absolutely, being messy. And when we are messy and we recognize that maybe our messiness may have caused unintentional harm, then we want to also, as leaders, quickly acknowledge that and make amends. And I think that piece is really important. It's not a free license to be messy without taking responsibility for consequences. So I just want to add that in, and having that awareness that, yes, I'm beta, I'm messy, and and really, really expanding in the process.
Yeah.
So I wanted to wonder if you wanted to share a little bit more about the Inner Resilience Network, and what are you doing with the Inner Resilience Network? I think you've had a couple different workshops and seminars, and just tell us about it.
Yeah, it's been around for a couple, actually 3 years now.
Okay.
And it's kind of in the scaling up mode this year, especially since COVID. We've got a really wonderful team of folks that have skills in different areas, all relating to I guess psychological, social resilience, and the network itself is in place to support community change makers, leaders across the country. And we're also we're in conversation with international movements as well. But right now we're really focusing on the US, and the intention is to create hubs all across the country of groups of practice, supporting practices, tools, resources for community leaders, change makers, activists in their communities to get help. In other words, holding the holders. I mean, who helps those that are trying to help so many others?
I love that. I just want to interject here. I just completed, it was based in the European Union. I just completed it's called The Art of Hosting, and it's we did participatory leadership training, and that's how do we host each other. It's called hosting there, but it's the same thing. How do we host each other as we're facilitating emergence? That's actually what we're facilitating, is the collective heart intelligence, or the healing from that is emergence. There's no one way. So that, and that was one of the things that came up for, excuse me, in my work there, was to be sure that I'm also building in, boy, it's a little dry here, that I'm also building in hosting for self. So did you want to comment on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I love Art of Hosting. I did their training as well. It's specifically for leaders, and to find ways, yes, that we help each other, but crowdsourcing and compiling resources that they can draw from, and that we're also looking at ways of doing stewardship so that we can help each other, like back and forth. So there's different things that we're talking about right now in order to get these hubs set up.
Okay.
And it's connected, by the way, it's connected to Transition US, which is also has hubs all over the world.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and part of this work is also to bring greater awareness to the Transition Network in the US around diversity and inclusion.
That's
So
fabulous.
so that's connected to the inner work. It's very important, I think.
Tell us a little. I've been connected with Transition USA too for, well, since Pachamama days back in 07, 08, 09. And tell us a little bit, just for, again, for the sake of the audience, just what is Transition US, or what is the Transition Collaborative? What's their focus and their mission, and how, again, are you and the Inner Resilience Network working together?
Right. Well, it began in the UK.
Right.
Yeah, with Rob Hopkins wrote, began these initiatives, and then it's spread all over the world. But essentially, it's efforts at building locally based communities that are weaning themselves off of the fossil fuel economy, the systems that are the extractive systems that we're all dependent on. So we're finding ways, and old ways, it's not new ways. I mean, permaculture has been around under different names for thousands of years, indigenous practices,
Yes,
and
it
so on.
has.
Yeah, so it's returning to some old ways and then finding new ways, solar and all that, that will get us off of needing to be dependent on this extractive system. So that's really what it's about. And then how inner resilience, the reason I was attracted to it many years ago was because it had this component to it called heart and soul, which is the psycho-spiritual aspect of the self. So it really considers the whole person. And I really love that, as opposed to other movements I looked at that didn't have that. So inner resilience was born out of that heart and soul component of transition, which is what is the inner part that we're talking about, the implicit bias, how we change how we do collective healing, how we do personal healing, in order to not have a mindset that is colonial, that is extractive thinking, so it's decolonizing ourselves. Essentially, it's social permaculture.
That is very, very powerful. I actually, and we can talk a little bit more about this. I was just interviewed on as a guest speaker for another podcast on social permaculture and some of the practices that I've been bringing into organizations. So we're so in alignment on that, and even understanding, like, what is social permaculture, and that's exactly what we're talking about. The one thing that I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure some of my listeners also weren't, was that I knew that Transition Towns, the Transition Collaborative was birthed in the UK. I didn't know the fundamental reason was to wean oneself, or wean our collective from fossil fuel dependency. That was the core mission or core reason for its birth. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. And now it's expanded into more like, how can we create resilient communities, understanding that fossil fuels is not sustainable. It does not contribute to ecosystem resiliency, including human species. I mean, our ecosystems. So anything else you want to say about that? The work is fascinating. I'm hearing that you're bringing in that heart, spirit, soul piece into the Transition US collaborative movement.
Yeah, I will also say that, transition has gotten, I mean, because it started in the UK and in the US, it's been predominantly white and mainstream.
Okay.
And it's gotten a little flack about that, and rightly so, but we're very actively working on how we can dismantle whatever it is in our own consciousness that has that perpetuates a white supremacist underpinning, which is ironic because the UK is originally colonized the US and then transitioned from the UK. And so I'm really very, very deeply interested in that conversation around the colonized mind and how we decolonize ourselves, and how we can be our own antibody to our ancestors' the history of oppression. Right.
This is very, very rich. I mean, just the way you're framing this, these memes that you're creating, really, that, decolonizing, creating our antibodies, decolonizing our ancestral history, decolonizing the collective trauma stored within our individual selves, but also our collective selves, and that including the white supremacy, of course. So these are fascinating conversations, and hopefully we're going to have more on this topic, because that was a Pandora's box, what you just presented. It's beautiful. So couple more things. I guess first of all, so you've kind of shared your passion throughout our conversation. Just right now, let's say for the rest of 2020 into 21, what are you really focused on and passionate about as far as this bridging the human divide and using relational somatics and, decolonizing our cellular structure, really, is what I'm really hearing. So go ahead.
Yeah. So those are the things I'm passionate about, and I'm also writing. I'm working on a couple writing projects, a book and some other articles. So I'm trying to get those done. But I'm very focused right now, other than that, on practice communities, building that, because we need people. My sense is that there's a great need for people to find places to drop in, to be able to ground themselves and explore other ways of being in the world, because there is so much anxiety, there is so much conflict and confusion about where we're going, because people are scared, and rightly so. And so, and especially as we go into this fall, we have a lot of fear coming up around the political scene. So and we've got all the protests going on and COVID and everything. So having practice groups it feels like really important right now, and getting tools out to people. In fact, we have an event coming Monday that I'd love to invite everybody to at 4 p.m. A new person to our team that is joining us, that will be helping us navigate othering, how we do that. So that's related to what we're talking about.
What is that? Why don't you, that sounds like another tool that would be very helpful to become aware of now, in addition to what you shared about just grounding into ourself and our belly breath. What is othering?
Othering is the way it's really the root of racism, I would suggest, because it's the way we make some other person or a whole community separate than ourselves, and usually less than, it's like going back to what we talked about with judgment, when we judge others or judge a community of people, like white folks did towards Black at the very beginning of our country, and decided that they were less than us, that they were even less than human. So that's an othering taken to an extreme. People we're not connected, we're not related, and we are. That's the reality. But when we other, we disown that reality. We disown the reality that we are all related, that we're all connected.
Yeah, I like that. And we still experience that unconscious othering, if you will, in the workplace settings that I'm involved with, where I do some of my consulting, and those are conversations that we're starting to have, particularly in their leadership communities of practice, particularly around the inclusion diversity piece. So there's so many places that we can take this awareness and these practices like othering that you just mentioned. I just love that. It's such a beautiful awareness for everyone. What I do want to suggest you do is at the just go onto the Facebook page and put in that information on the recording so people can join. And I guess, let's see, we got a couple more things here I want to just touch upon. You mentioned so much just what we're facing in the coming months and why there is, like you said, rightfully so, fear, and fear creating the separation. And just we're in quite a boiling pot right now, if you will. But what advice or encouragement can you offer to others as we navigate, let's just do short term, these next 3 to 6 months? Again, keeping in mind about bridging the divide, the human divide. What advice or encouragement would you like to offer to others?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. I would say just stay with your belly breathing. If you start feeling confused, there's so many narratives that people go down those rabbit holes and get lost. It's very easy to do so. Even the best of us have been compelled by false information, for instance. And I just say, to just stay with your body, stay with your breathing, and stay in the not knowing. And not just that, because not knowing is really helpful. Just embracing the mystery of life helps you become more present and not go into future fearing. But that doesn't mean we don't want to prepare. But the irony is that we actually prepare for any potential more crisis or disaster by being present. So because we build that muscle, it's literally a muscle, being present, that we can draw from when crisis does happen. We can come back to the moment, and we're able to think clearly when we're in the moment. We're able to kind of be able to sort what to do next. So that, and also just being kind to each other, just give each other the benefit of the doubt. If somebody believes differently than you, or is espousing some belief that's really like you have a strong reaction to, just breathe and try to not engage in that conflict. Just find ways to be kind and forgiving.
And these are such simple, we think they're simple practices, right? These are things that I think we learned back when at least they were shared with, we share this with our children, right?
Yeah.
Kindness is strength, is one of the things that I recently was writing on. And anything else to help people be present, just other than just that, coming back to the body so that you don't do something you would regret later, in an interpersonal situation or in a larger group situation. Any other suggestions, practices? Again, we're talking about these, resiliency tools to navigate the unknown, really.
Well, also very important is to serve others. If there's people in your community or network, your neighborhood, that are in need, find out who those people are. And if you, to your capacity, help them. That really helps us be present. It helps us stay connected. It helps us feel engaged. And it does so much good for our well-being, as well as the well-being of that person we're helping. Yeah, so help others. I mean, it's simple. Be kind, help others, but most importantly, just try to. It is work to continually bring our minds back to present time and not go into fear. I think it is important to be prepared for unrest, but be prepared in a way that that is grounded.
Absolutely. I'm so happy you mentioned that. I started the community resilience group in my current community, which is Sedona, Arizona, and it was based on a beta project. Like I said, we're in the beta era. Right after the fires in California in 2019, we launched it in different communities in Oakland, California. So I love that you're mentioning the service leadership piece, the contribution. And service leadership, from my perspective, really is the model that when I go in and help leaders develop certain skills and practices. we go in with that attitude of service leadership, even if it's with a large company. It's how am I serving the people that I'm responsible for, and how am I serving my whoever my customers are, whatever my product or service is. But so service, kindness, presence. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I mean, it's really the antidote to the toxic fallout of our system that we're seeing that is falling apart, because the toxic fallout is, it's all about me, or it's about what I can get or what I can profit from. And so we have that culture that has gotten us to where we are today. And so it's literally the antidote to that is thinking about others, being kind, being with ourselves, living simply, not needing to profit off of everything, not seeing everything as profit. That's the decolonizing work too.
Absolutely. We've touched upon this, or I've touched upon this in conversations with other guests, the me versus the we. And I have an Indigenous mentor right now that I've been working with. And one of the things that he mentioned very recently was that true freedom is when we're no longer thinking about me. And I mean, that, you have to go in and do a deep inquiry around that. And what does that really mean? How does that reflect or oppose what different countries have been founded on? This one, presumably in the past, this sense of freedom. Is the sense of freedom just about me? I'm curious what you have to say about that.
No, because when it's just about you, there's always this feeling of disconnect, like, where do I belong? Who am I? Whatever. And what can I get? But I don't think it's also about we. That's what the relational somatics is also trying to address, is the both and they say both and. So it's me, we. And there, I do matter as an individual, but I also my community matters equally. And
I love that.
yeah, so it's a me, we, and finding that balance.
That's beautiful, and that's actually some good clarification, I think, for a lot of people that are listening, because the me to we movement was birthed probably about a decade ago. I started reading about it and actually writing about it, and it was in a lot of conversations. And what I'm hearing is that evolution of me, we, or me to we, it's not me or we, it's me and we. And I really like that paradigm and that meme, that it's one collective whole. I'm not less or more important than the we. The we is not less or more important than the me. That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that correct?
Well, to clarify, the we is going to have a stronger collective influence than the me, for instance, because there's different scales. But my individual health is primary to me, is important to me. So that matters. If I don't have that, then I'm not really able to contribute to the health of the whole. So that's why the individual is really important.
Very good. So, and I guess that another one of the quotes, none of us are as good as all of us. So just more power in the collective.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this has been a very rich conversation, Jul. I'm really, really excited about a number of things that have come up, and what stood out too is this communities of practice. And I want to encourage those who listen to this, who are listening now or will be listening in the future, look more into transition, collaborative, or the Inner Resilience Network, and what kinds of communities of practice could be appropriate for your communities, because we have communities of 4,000 or 10,000 inhabitants who are also experiencing a human divide. And then we have cities with millions of inhabitants with many different neighborhoods, each with their own social demographic flavor, if you will. So I think that's a really good inquiry. What kinds of communities of practice can we have? Could it be something as simple as an MVC group, for example, nonviolent communication? Could it be like I mentioned earlier, community resiliency group? Could it be a community garden group? I mean, just are there any other suggestions you have for those who don't quite yet have it in their communities? What are some of the simplest ways to start communities of practice?
Well, first of all, I'll just say that we are initiating communities of practice online on Zoom, and they're specifically geared for leaders.
Okay.
And in fact, one of them will be helping leaders to initiate communities of practice. So there's your answer. But if they want to just jump to it and start doing it on their own, you know, whatever is their background, and inviting a few friends and just navigating, there's different tools you can use. I'm happy to answer more questions offline if people are really seriously wanting to start something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we will be starting that group. So, sorry.
So how can we reach you, Jul? For that, I guess we would reach you through the Inner Resilience Network. Is that the best place?
Yes, there's a website that we just, it's new. So the link you had there is Era of Care, which is the other work that I'm doing that we really didn't have time to touch on, but it will lead you to that website. And the community practice groups are not up there yet, but I'm happy to give my contact if you want to know right away. Otherwise, check the website, and you can sign up for our Google group list, and you'll get announcements when they start up. They will be starting up in September. Okay, and also, yeah, you can become a member that way. So you'll
put it in our chat if I can. And otherwise, just go when the recording's finished. Just put it in the chat itself, right on the Facebook page, on my Facebook page. So I think we have covered a lot of territory. We've definitely learned about practices to bridge the human divide, both within ourselves, within our communities, within organizations, how leaders can take a big step forward, particularly with communities of practice. And I just want to thank everyone who has joined this call, and thank you, Jul, for coming on. Again, I'm Shera Sever. I'm the founder of Igniting the Spark, and I consult with organizational and community leaders, particularly on practices such as which we've talked about, and communication skills. And Jul, you'll be able to reach through the Era of Care Inner Resilience Network. We're going to put that link in our chat. And I want to invite everyone to join me again. Next Wednesday, I'll be interviewing another everyday change maker named Nikki Ray. And you can get the full program of events by going to Facebook, Igniting the Spark, Bridging the Human Divide. And I'll put that link in our chat as well. And I'm going to continue this series through the month of October. I've had quite a few people step forward and really want to share their practices. So welcome to the network here, Jul. And I look forward to speaking with you offline, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much, Shera. I really appreciate the time with you.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah, thanks for doing this work too.